All right, so now I've set up a digital painting. This is my field here. It's 13 by 17 inches at 350 pixels per inch. I have the reference I'm working for my portrait. I like to work from more than one image when I'm doing a human, because very often they look, slightly different from different angles, and the camera lies a little bit. And I want to try to put it all together to be a person that looks like that person. So I think I'm going to use the glasses from this one. I'm going to use the basic orientation of this one, but I'll probably make him turning a little bit more to the side like this one. And I could flip that, but you'll notice when you flip the orientation of photos and you're going for a likeness, they won't look like themselves from the other direction. So I'm not going to flip them in this case. Instead, I'm just going to try to take the information from my multiple references and put it into my drawing. Now, how I usually start is I go to my canvas. I use a brush, my own brush. I'm going to keep it about 150 pixels large. It has the brush settings that I was using in my speed paintings from previous demos, so that it goes thick to thin, but not too thin, based on the pressure. And I have my angle automatically jittering and changing throughout, just a little bit, so it's not always the same. And I'm going to change my roundness a little bit too. And I'll put that based on pin tilt, though my thing doesn't support that. Yeah, maybe I'll just do it randomly. But all just to get a slightly more organic stroke. Okay. Then, because I'm just going to be sketching, I'm going to take it down to about 60%, 60 or 70%. And I like to sketch with a blue line. And I'm going to lock my background, make this my blank white layer, lock it. And now I'm going to do what I call my basic shape sketch on top. So there's a few ways I can do this. I could work on my reference and trace that and then bring that tracing over. But I'm just going to try it this way because I'm going to try to make my own pose, which I like best. And I'm going to start with the cranium shape. That's the circle of the head. I'm going to bring down the kind of action line through the middle of the face. You see how I'm turning it a little bit more than it is here. I want to find where the bottom of the nose is going to be. And I can kind of see how that nose will be shaped. And the reason I'm working at a slightly lower resolution here, or not resolution, opacity, is so that I can refine the shapes I like somewhat. In fact, I might even take it a little bit lower. So I start with kind of guidelines here. The tilt of the eyes on that nose. The placement of the eyes. There should be 5 eyes across the head if they were looking straight at us. The shape of the jaw, kind of the egg shape of the head. The eyes should be near the middle of that overall height. How it lines up with the ears. The ears should fit between the eyes and the nose. You'll see that in both these references. That's true of adults generally. And then how much space is there between the ear and the eye. Notice I'm not worrying about the glasses. Those would be kind of the last things. That's like the ketchup and the mustard. The hairline, getting its shape, and then the hair going up on top of the skull. So thinking in terms of simple clumps of shapes that I can understand. Kind of chiseling out the jaw a little bit. Then he's got facial hair, which I can map in, which extends his jaw a little. Where his mouth would be. His jawline would be. So this is me just getting used to the subject without being a a slave to just one photo reference, even if I shot the photo. Okay, now what I like about doing that sketch on one layer is now I can make the most of it. Let's see, where do I want the eye looking? So maybe if I have the eye like that, and the eye here. Now before I do too much more sketching, I feel like that eye should be a little bit flatter. I can use some of the things I've learned from compositing. I can rotate it a little bit. I can warp it just a little bit, kind of push and pull my sketch. This would be a great way to do a caricature, right? I can make the head really long or really wide and still have it make some representational likeness to the person. This way I can shift the eye line up a little bit or down. I want him looking kind of more and straightforward, not looking so down at the viewer. And change the angle. That looks pretty good. Okay, I can also just move it around the canvas. So maybe I want to move his head more into this zone of it. Maybe I just want to grow it all a little bit. It's a more contained portrait. Compositional concerns. Okay, so now let me continue sketching. And I'm going to work with the neck and the collar. And what do I want to fit into my portrait? I also want to start recognizing where the deepest shadows are. Eye sockets tend to be pretty deep shadows. And rough in the placement of the glasses, how they frame the eyes. Looking at the spaces between objects, and especially the space I've given for the eye. And I can always use the eraser. Nice sharp eraser. Clear up my sketch a little bit. Now, ultimately, this is just to help map everything out. These sketch lines probably won't be showing in any way in my final. This is all an optional step for digital painting. But when you're trying to get likeness on someone, you have to really kind of pay attention to how their face works, how their features work. I'm noticing that the bridge of the nose is a little bit narrower than I have it, so I'll go to my eraser, sculpt that down. Gives me more space for the other eye, which is nice. Open up these glasses a little bit. And it's just like the kind of sketch you would do in a sketchbook, but what's nice about digital art is it preserves all of the spontaneity of your sketch, and it helps immediately inform your painting. You don't have to repeat it, translating it from a sketchbook onto a canvas. I can erase out some of my guidelines here, as I'm happier with them. Space for the nose. Now I use blue line because I'm come from a previous generation of illustrators that used non-photo blue pencils, and this couldn't be picked up by a photocopier. And so you would draw with your colored pencil, and then you'd ink over it, and then you'd photocopy it, and you wouldn't have to bother erasing your pencil. But it's also just kind of a pleasing middle tone that color will work well on top of. And I like using blue when I do portraits because portraits are a lot of warm colors, and so it's nice to have blue undertones to those colors sometimes to help inform your decisions. So I'm turning his head more than here, and you can see that from the nose. I think I need to make the nose a little bit longer. So the other thing you can do is you can take chunks of your sketch, just like we've learned with compositing, which is why we studied that first. And then you can warp those individually. And it's kind of sketching and it's kind of sculpting. Trying to match the pose you want, the spacing you want, with the lips, with the jaw, with the hair. And you just explore until it feels right. But you have all these options you don't have working with traditional media. It's not about detail, it's about the placement. So I'm just trying to figure that out. How wide should the glasses be on that side? Where should the eye be placed, even though it's mostly in shadow? How much is forehead? Where does the bump on his head go? Where's the room for his eyebrows? His hairline in the back here. It's always good to be willing to be sketchy in the beginning. And the shape of the ear actually does a lot to tell us about the likeness of someone too. So I like to take a little time to kind of carve out the outside shape of the ear. Just what kind of angles it's hitting, how that flows into the neck, how thick the neck is, how the jawline works. Portraits aren't comic book characters. You're looking at everything that's kind of unique about how their facial structure gets placed. You can give yourself a lot of kind of guidelines. Mustache goes a little broader there. Mouth goes a little broader. I'm thinking more in terms of placement and shapes than I am in terms of outline. So it's really tempting just to draw a bottom of the jaw, but there isn't really a bottom of the jaw. There's just edges that come together. So I might even just shade it in a little bit. Show the neck. Show where I want to pick it up again. I'm not going to see his ear on the other side, so I need to see a little bit more of this cheek. And then kind of shape it out. Corner of the glasses. And it's feeling better. You can also erase at a lower opacity, which can be helpful in sketching. You don't always have to erase at 100%. I find if I erase at 100% though, I commit a little bit more. I stay a little more focused. And then I'm even going to draw some of these shadows, because this is the lighting I like, even though I might exaggerate it a little bit. But I like the shadows of the glasses. I like how they model the face. I'm going to map some of those shadows in his dimples. I see it looks like he has a little bit more space here. I'm going to take the whole top half of the head. This will be the last thing I probably do in this sketch demo. And I'm going to just pull a little bit. Up and down. Try to get the proportions of the top part of the head to where I want them.